It's August 1st, 2019. This is Bill Apter, not feeling too great down here in Apter's Alley. Yeah, a little stubble, and was on vacation, haven't shaven, but that's, forget that. It is mid-afternoon, August 1st, 2019, and it's rare for me to have trouble putting things into words. So I wrote some things down here, and about an hour and a half ago, I got a call from one of my dear friends, Herb Simmons, promoter, in St. Louis, Missouri, and I was busy at my other occupation, helping people with disabilities to find jobs. And when I saw Herb's name come up on the phone, I said to my client, just hang on for a sec. Herb Simmons is calling, it's got to be something major. And he asked me if I had heard that Harley Race had died. And I hadn't. It was a shocking lightning bolt that just went absolutely through me. I thought of so many of the times that I spent with Harley, but more than that, what our profession, our business has lost. I mean, perhaps one of the greatest, when you talked about a wrestler, not an entertainer or anything, when you talked about a wrestler and you asked people way back when, who's a real classic wrestler? Who can you think of being a classic wrestler? One of the first names, if not the first name they would come up with, was Harley Race. And it wasn't just his wrestling. And by the way, that picture next to me right now, the cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, was a photo that I shot of him in the PWI portable studio many, many years ago, with him holding the belt. And I'm taking a little sideline here for a sec. When Harley raced, all the times he held the National Wrestling Alliance World Heavyweight Championship belt, you could see in this cover alone, it's one of my favorite pictures that I ever took, and one of my favorite covers of PWI. Thank you, PWI, for allowing me to use this, by the way, as well. When you saw him hold the belt, you saw a man who was proud. The way he held it, he just exemplified everything that was a champion. So getting back to what I was saying is that when you talk about a real professional wrestler, Harley Race was right up there. He was a man's man. He really was. He might have been, well, he was the total package as well. He might have been precise and soft-spoken on his interviews, but he always made his point. And I remember his interviews, and Harley, the last few times I saw him at conventions, would always ask me to, I'd always do my Harley voice for him, but I remember his promos, and allow me at this time, out of respect, to do this, but he would go against somebody like Ric Flair, a perennial opponent of his, and he'd look in the camera and he'd hold the belt up and he'd say, "You know something, Ric Flair? It takes a lot to be a champion. And I know, Ric Flair, that you've got a lot, but you don't have what Harley Race has, son." He would talk like that. And many times when I was photographing his matches around ringside, God, I started doing that in the early 70s. He would come into the ring and he'd have the belt underneath his robe, and he'd open up that robe and pose there with that belt, looking so very proud that he was a champion's champion. Yeah, and when he was in the ring, the photographers around the ring and I used to always marvel at how great he looked when you saw the pictures that you shot. And he always had this sound. A lot of wrestlers make sounds in the ring, and Harley's sound was always cha ya ya, cha ya ya. And I used to joke with him about it, and he'd smile. But Harley was a genuine champion. I had the pleasure of being with him not just in the United States, but on a tour of Japan in the mid-'80s. And it was Harley who helped orchestrate a lot of the guys who a lot of the Japanese guys who didn't know me, who I wanted to pose. It was Harley that would tell them who I am and why I should pose for them. He put me over all the time. He was just so great. He accepted me as part of the National Wrestling Alliance family back there. And many times I spent days in the St. Louis office and once in a while in the Kansas City office with he and Bob Geigel and Pat O'Connor and Larry Matysek and Sam Muchnick, and they're all gone now. Classic matches. Who can forget his feuds, especially Ric Flair, Dory Funk, Terry Funk, the Von Erichs, Ted DiBiase. Harley was a champion who defended his championship all over the world. He wasn't just a United States-based world champion. He was everywhere. He was in France, Germany, Australia, Japan, as I mentioned before. Every corner of the globe, Harley Race was. And we put Harley Race on the cover of the magazines. People always knew that you were looking at class, absolute class. Let me see if there's... I remember one time my boss Stanley Weston had told me, don't ever get on small planes with the wrestlers. He was nervous that something would happen. And I remember I was supposed to go on a small plane with Harley in Japan from one city to the other. And I don't know why he did this, but he said, when you get in these small planes, sometimes these little wind gusts take you moving up and down, and up and down, and it's going side, and you're going to get sick. So I didn't take the plane. I drove with some of the other guys. When I got to the town, he said, "Are you a coward? It was the best flight we ever had." And then he laughed, and he didn't mean to do that. He told me he was just ribbing me. And I was on many other flights with him during that tour, and subsequently on a lot of other trips. This is one thing that a lot of wrestlers back then did not do, and Harley was always a gentleman with this. If we put him on the cover, or we ran a story on him, if he hadn't seen me at one of the arenas, he always called from his home in Missouri to say thank you. He was always very grateful for all the publicity that we did on him. And wherever you are, Harley, just thank you for doing this. And one of the most fun times I had with him, when my book came out as Wrestling Fixed, I didn't know it was broken. I asked him to, and his son Leland, to cut a promo for the book, and he did it, and he was joking around the whole time. He had such a great sense of humor. So it's hard to wrap this up because there's just so much more I could probably talk about, but what I want to say is that I will miss the person. I will miss the man who exuded what every champion in the world should be like. And there'll never be another one. Never be another one like the master of all time, Harley Race. So let me end this with ja ya ya ya. Boy, Harley Race, you were just absolutely amazing, and thank you for your contributions to the world of professional wrestling, because the world of professional wrestling would not be what it was back in those golden days without you leading the pack. This is Bill Apter, and if you'd like to leave your memories of Harley Race here on One Wrestling Video on our YouTube channel or wherever you're seeing this, please feel free to do this. Harley Race, August 1st, 2019, a horrible day in history.